Welcome to the Everyday GSD podcast. Today's podcast is sponsored by Good Dudes Coffee, gooddudescoffee.com. They're an excellent coffee company owned by a veteran, started by a veteran. He's actually was on our show. I mention this all the time. He was on episode 31. Josh Bridges, former Navy SEAL, also is an amazing CrossFit athlete. So go to gooddudescoffee.com. They're supporting this show, so let's support them. Give them some love. The discount code is EverydayGSD10. I say that again, EverydayGSD10 for Good Dudes Coffee. If you need a little pep in your step, go to gooddudescoffee.com and get your coffee there. Okay, today's special guest. Hey, where'd you drive in from?
From Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Ann Arbor. How long is that drive?
It's about 4 hours. Not too bad. I'm used to long hauls, so
nice.
It was easy.
Well, I'm going to do a little bio on you,
Sure.
and then you're going to get into some amazing stories. You've got a book coming out that should be pre-release or early release on the
December 15th. Yep.
December 15th.
And then the book actually comes out February 15th.
February 15th. And the name of the book is Life and Death at Abbey Gate. And for those of you who don't know what Abbey Gate is, you need to definitely listen to this whole show because you're going to learn all about it.
That's right. This has been a long time coming, huh? We've been talking about getting me down here for a while.
Yeah. So we have a mutual I'd say friend, but we do business with the same person. The person that was my co-author / ghostwriter / collaborator, Robert Conlon, an amazing guy up in Maine. See, he's still up in Maine, right?
He is, yeah.
Yeah.
Has he told you the story of how me and him actually met?
No. Tell me now.
This is a good one. You're going to like this. So I was just starting to write my book. This is a couple years ago.
Yeah, because we've been trying to go into this for 2 years easily, right?
Yeah, and obviously the DoD evaluation, took a little longer than expected, so that's part of the delay. Luckily, they didn't redact too much, so that was good. I've seen some guys' books come back, like Chad Robichaux's book came back like completely black.
Yeah.
So luckily mine didn't get redacted too bad.
And you left the black in it, right?
He left, yeah, which I thought was a very cool thing. I did not, because I didn't have much redacted. Chad left his like completely redacted.
Oh.
So there's like literally like whole pages that are just missing.
Yeah, because I was going to tell you before yours goes to print, but it's probably too late now because we're past that time, is to make sure yours stays black.
So I just got a question. And it's probably dumb, but can you either talk about something that was redacted or can you give an example of what would be redacted? Because I don't.
Yeah, he can. He's not in right now. He was just, he's protecting people that are in. I mean, I'm making that assumption. It's like when I did my book, Robert said we need to get it approved by the Pentagon through our people, but not my people, like in the world I was in.
Yep.
And I reached out to a couple people and they were like, fuck that, man. Just, you're not in. Like,
yeah. So mine they reviewed it for probably 7-8 months. And I was expecting it to come back just like super black because it's a lot of sensitive topics, nothing not classified.
Not classified, just topics.
You just never know what they're going to come back with, right? But for the most part, the things that they redacted out of mine were just like names of units and where they were specifically and dates and stuff. Like it wasn't that big of a deal. So I really didn't have to, I didn't feel the need to really black a lot of stuff out and just leave it. So yeah, I was pleasantly surprised, a lot better than I've seen other ones. But anyway, back to what I was saying, me and Robert.
We got all day, man.
Yeah. So yeah, this is funny. So I'm starting to write my book and I start looking for, ghostwriter co-authors, just somebody to help me, through the process. And so one morning I'm driving to jiu-jitsu and it's 6 a.m. and I'm listening to Clear Top podcast, which is one of my favorite podcasts.
Andy Stumpf.
Yeah. And it was your episode and I had no idea who you were. But I was, kind of reading through the descriptions like, oh, this one sounds cool. Like a special ops Coast Guard. Didn't even know that exists.
Right.
And then, so you start talking about your book and the process and this dude, Robert Conlon, that helped you write this book. And you had nothing but good things to say about him. So,
amazing.
So I'm like, all right, well, I'll purchase the book. And so I bought it. I read it. I was like, this is a very well told story. Maybe this guy can help me. So I find Robert on LinkedIn and I send him an email. And the way I worded the email was kind of like, I knew you.
Yeah.
Which obviously I didn't know you at all.
I love everything about this.
So he gets back to me like pretty much right away. We jump on a phone call for 2 or 3 hours and I just tell him the whole story.
Yeah.
And he's just like, dude, I would love to be a part of this. So once I knew I had him locked in, I'm like, by the way, like, I don't know Darin. I just want to throw this out there.
But that's some everyday GSD shit right there.
That's some everyday GSD shit right there. That's definitely doing it right. I love it.
Yeah, it was funny. But just super lucky to work with Robert. He really helped me, find my voice on the page, which is, I'm not a writer.
Nor am I.
Yeah, no, I'm never did any sort of writing at all. And I love doing it. It was very therapeutic for me actually to write this book after, all the experiences of the shit show that was the Afghanistan withdrawal.
Well, let's stop there. Let's stop on the Afghanistan withdrawal, because obviously I want to go into that, but let me just do a little history on you, and then
please.
So again, from Ann Arbor, Michigan, you were in the military for 6 years. You were reserve. That obviously probably, I'm assuming you got activated to go to Afghanistan. You did so you're a combat vet. You did a tour over there, and it was during 2019, 2020 you were there.
Yep. So towards the end of the war. Yep.
Towards the end of the war, and you had obviously you had relationships with interpreters and individuals in Afghanistan. So when you saw and witnessed the withdrawal from Afghanistan, this changed something in you.
Yeah.
That you needed to do something about it.
For sure.
And we'll go into that. But you also hobbies, hockey, jiu-jitsu. But again, we're here really to talk about you writing this book and sharing your story, Life and Death at Abbey Gate. So yeah, let's just jump into it, man.
Yeah. So I guess
we can talk about pre first.
Sure.
And then, yeah.
So I'll give you a little background. Like you said, I grew up in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Didn't come from a military family. So, joining the military was not something that was on my radar very early on in life. But grew up playing team sports, fell in love with hockey at a very early age, played competitively my whole life, just loved the sport, but also, like, as as a hockey player, just loved the camaraderie and being a part of the team, just being one of the boys, right?
Yeah.
That's probably like the best part about playing any competitive sport, is just being a part of a bigger organization, being a part of a group where you can make a difference. So went to college after school, played club hockey at Eastern Michigan University. Again, had a great time. Graduated, moved out to California
And about how old are you about this time?
Graduated.
22?
Yeah, 21, 22.
Okay.
Move out to California, lived out there for 5-6 years.
You kind of look like a California guy, though.
Oh, dude, I love it out there. I'm telling you, it's just the best.
Southern Cal?
Yeah, I lived in Huntington Beach and Newport Beach, and totally, took on that surfer persona. I mean, I lived on a street with a bunch of surfers, and every morning we were out there.
Yeah.
And, it was just the best.
So then you're like, fuck it, I want to go to war.
That's exactly what led now. But yeah, these Michigan winters are quite brutal now after experiencing a little of that California sun for sure.
No doubt.
So yeah, lived out there for 5-6 years. And I was still like right out of school. I was, in that honeymoon phase of like being done with school, being done with hockey, and like, life's great.
Yeah.
But eventually, like, that thirst started coming back of like wanting to be a part of something,
Right.
You're missing that hockey team and missing that just group of guys. So I think the military was something that had kind of been in the back of my mind from when I was young. I mean, I remember sitting on the couch and watching those Army commercials and just being like, man, that's pretty badass. Like, I wonder what Afghanistan is like. And for whatever reason, like, Afghanistan was always like, part of like my thought process when I thought about joining the military. I just always wanted to see what that country was like and what the people were like. So I started doing some exploring online as to what branch I wanted to go in. And, so I kind of narrowed it down to the Marine Corps and Army. Since I had my degree, the Army was going to let me start.
They were like, you can start off as the 3-star general.
Yeah. So I got to start as a E4. So I should say, since I had my degree, I could have gone enlisted or an officer.
Right.
And not really knowing much about the military, I did have some buddies that were enlisted. I didn't know anybody that was an officer. And I kind of got led down the road of like, well, do you want to be doing paperwork as an officer, or do you want to be in the field, doing your job? So I joined as enlisted. Army let me start as E4 versus the Marine Corps. I think they wanted me to start as an E2. So that was a pretty easy decision for me.
Yeah. Right.
So joined the Army, started as an E4, and
now this is a dumb question, but I'll ask it just because I always get Army confused. So you went to regular boot camp.
Yep.
You graduate boot camp, And then so you went in as an E1, but you graduated boot camp as an E4?
No, I wore the rank of E4
In boot camp.
day one.
Oh, okay. So like for the Navy and the Coast Guard, what happens is if you have any sort of education, associate's degree or so many credits, you can graduate as a E3 or an E4. I don't know if they do an E4 actually, but but you even though you will be as soon as you graduate, but you don't until you graduate.
Yeah. They still call you private. Like, it doesn't matter what rank you're wearing.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, so I'm wearing the rank of an E4, but the drill sergeants are calling me a private. And actually, I remember one of my first days there, one of the drill sergeants looked at me and, he can tell I'm an older dude. Because I turned 28 at basic training. And
oh, wow.
So he looks at me, he's like, where the fuck were you 3 years ago when my buddies were dying in Afghanistan? I'm like, oh shit, like this is going to be bad.
You're like, I know, I was fucking surfing in San Diego, man.
I was having a great time. Where were you?
Yeah.
So that was an interesting experience. Looking, just like any service member, looking back at basic training or boot camp is just like hysterical to think about. But got through that, went down to Gulfport, Mississippi, for my AIT advanced individual training. That's like phase 2 for Army. I was an engineer, so we went down and trained with the CBs, Navy CBs, which was cool.
Yeah, those guys are pretty fucking legit.
Yeah, they are legit. Their training was actually a lot longer than ours. Ours was like 7 weeks. I think they're down there for like 14 or 15 weeks or something.
But do you think, and this is another Army question for you, and if Jeremy's listening, Jeremy was on the show a while ago. He's a former Green Beret. And so all my Army friends out there, I made the comment about a general starting off with a degree. All of you are real smart individuals, but not all of you, if you know what I'm saying. So Jeremy, he was saying like most of the Army schools are shorter than the Navy schools. Mm-hmm. Is it because you're doing this? Why is that? Do you
I don't know. Yeah, I have no idea.
Is it because you're going to do more hands-on training in the Army right away?
I think they tell you when you go to AIT, like, hey, you're going to learn some stuff here, but you're really going to learn when you get to your unit. Like we're going to teach you the basics, but it's once you get to your unit, you're going to learn your job. You're going to learn, really where your place is in the Army. So I don't know if that's any different in a different branch, but that's what they tell you.
Okay. So you're down there training.
Yeah. So there for 7-8 weeks. And then, I'm in the reserve. So I graduate that and I go home. So it's a lot different than active duty, but then you have, your 1 weekend a month, drills. And, in the summer you go do like a 2 or 3 week CSTX where you're just out like camping in the woods and it sucks, but, it's not bad. So, just did, the reserve thing
and you're doing reserves up in Ann Arbor?
My unit was in Toledo, Ohio.
So you traveled once a month down there?
Yeah, it was only an hour, so it's easy. Okay. And they put you up in a room, and it's fun. You go see your guys once a month, and it's a good time.
Yeah.
So I did that until we got orders to deploy, and the private news network, as we call it in the Army, started talking about people hearing about deployment orders, and this time they were right, and we didn't know where we were going.
And how long had you been in at this point?
So I joined in 17. This was
two
in
years.
19. Yeah. So a couple years.
Okay.
I had picked up my E5 by this point. So I was a sergeant.
Okay.
So we didn't know where we were going exactly, but we knew we were going somewhere in the Middle East. And, I knew that I wanted to go to Afghanistan. Everyone, kind of has like a list of where they think they want to go. Some guys wanted Iraq, some want Syria, some just want to go like chill in Kuwait because Kuwait is super chill and you can go like to the movie theater and go to Burger King.
Yeah.
But I knew I wanted to go to Afghanistan and I wanted to see the country. And then I remember we were down doing our work up in Texas, and my platoon sergeant comes into the room after a leadership meeting. He's like, "We're going to Afghanistan," and I was just so pumped.
Yeah. And how many people were not pumped? A handful.
Yeah, probably. A small handful. I mean, I think everyone was fairly excited.
Yeah.
Because that's why you join the service, right? No one's. Right. Well, I guess you get a little of both probably in every branch. You get the guys that really want to be there for the right reasons, and those are the guys that you can count on, and those are the guys you're going to develop like lifelong friendships with. Right. And then you get the shitbags, right? The guys that
I love that term, shitbag.
And maybe I shouldn't say that because there's some people that joining the military is,
you can say shitbag.
Well, yeah, but you get the people that joining the military is truly like it's what they have to do because maybe they don't have other options, and that doesn't necessarily make them a shitbag. But the people that join because they want to be there, it's easy to identify those guys, right?
Because I always say that shitbag is a person when they're trying to skate away from any job.
Right.
They're trying to do anything they can do to get away from any responsibilities or do anything that they're supposed to do. They're just skating through. It's a shitbag.
Yep. And you're going to find those anywhere, but especially in the reserves, you're going to find a lot of guys that are just trying to get by. So we leave Texas. We get to Kuwait. We're there for like a week, and then we fly into Afghanistan. So fly into Bagram, which is pretty much where everyone flies into initially when you get there, and
Bagram Air Force Base.
Yep. And man, it was such a cool experience just landing there because we had been in Kuwait. It was hot as hell in Kuwait. It's like 120 degrees. It's miserable.
It's a dry heat, Justin.
It's a dry heat.
I've seen the movie.
So we land in Bagram like late at night, probably 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. And you step off the plane and it's, nice and chilly. You feel that mountain breeze. And like right as we're walking off the plane, a couple fighter jets take off right next to us and just the flames are shooting out the back. And you're just like, all right, this is awesome. So I had a great deployment. I mean, like I said, I was an engineer, so we didn't really see any combat.
You were a 486 engineer company?
Yeah, 486 engineer company. So, our job's not to go fight the Taliban. Our job, for the most part, was building stuff. So, building security, building B huts like barracks, whatever. We did some, built some jocks, joint operations centers. So whatever, they needed us to build, we did. But I spent a little bit of time up northern Afghanistan after our week in Bagram, up in Mazar Sharif. It's probably the second biggest city in Afghanistan, I think.
Yeah, because you were at Camp
Marmal.
Yeah, Camp Marmal.
Which was a German-run NATO base, which was pretty cool because, we had a pretty small U.S. Task force there, but for the most part, everybody was from anywhere else in the world. I mean, there's people from every NATO country there.
Right.
So it's cool to, mingle with people from everywhere.
And so this is 2019.
This is 19.
So, and for people who don't follow or not necessarily, they were distracted during 2019. What's the tempo? What's the temperature there?
It's pretty light. Point? Yeah, I mean,
real light, right?
Comparatively to the rest of the war, very light.
Yeah.
This is the very end of it. Fast forward a couple months.
Well, you can't say the end of it because we didn't know it was the end of it.
We didn't know. Yeah, I mean, we did a few months later as the Doha agreement started getting discussed. But at Camp Marmal, that's actually where I met Abdul and Mohammad, who are the two main characters in my book. Became very good friends with them, worked with them on a daily basis.
And they were interpreters?
No, they were contractors. So as engineers, we're building constantly, and they were pretty much the resource that we needed to get materials for whatever we needed.
Right.
So they'd show up in, trucks with full lumber or full of whatever. They could get anything. But honestly, more than like coworkers, they became friends very quickly. And if you know anything about Afghan hospitality, I mean, I know people say this about any culture. Afghans are the most hospitable people in the entire world. They'll give you the shirt off their back. Just amazing people. They would bring us homemade food all the time. I mean, you're on deployment, so you're not getting great tasting food ever, right?
Yeah.
It's for the most part,
unless you're in pretty
shitty.
Unless you're in the Air Force.
Unless you're in the Air Force and you're eating lobster and filet mignon. But yeah, I mean, a great dude. So just developed a really great friendship with them. And I remember when I got my orders to leave Mazar Sharif and head to Camp Morehead, which is a little south of Kabul, I was a little bummed. I mean, I was excited for my next adventure, but I remember going to say bye to Abdul and Mohammad and gave them hugs. And, I wrote about this a little bit in the book, and I said, hey, it'd be great if you would come and visit me in Michigan sometime. And we laughed, knowing that it was never going to happen. And
you're truly saying goodbye, not see you later.
Yeah, we knew that we were never going to see each other again.
Those are facts.
Yeah. And it just is what it is. So said bye to them. Go to Camp Morehead, which is a like a special forces compound,
Yep.
a little south of Kabul.
That's south of Kabul.
Yeah, and that's where the Afghan commandos train and live. So their special forces unit. So we had a real small contingency of U.S. forces there. There's probably less than 100 of us there. Real small camp. But anytime you can get on a special forces camp, it's awesome because there's like the rules are a little, they don't really exist to be honest.
I was like, rules.
The food's a lot better. You can we walked around in hoodies and it's like, didn't blouse our boots and just
flip flops are okay.
All the stupid shit that you have to follow in any like cantonment base, right?
Yeah.
So rode out the rest of the deployment there, and then went home. And
so how long was the deployment? 9 months?
We were in Afghanistan for 11 months.
11 months.
10, 11 months, yeah. And then Kuwait on either end of that. And actually, you know what? Like, yeah, so we left in summer 2020, but it was like right when COVID struck. So we got pretty screwed. So we had to quarantine in Kuwait for a month, which was just fucking miserable.
Did you hear that, Justin? A month just sitting there quarantined.
In your tent. I mean, like, it's so brutal. You can't do anything. Like any of
it's like solitary confinement.
Yeah, any of like the cool stuff that Kuwait offers because it's such a shitty place is gone. So you can't go to the movie theater, you can't go to the gym. There's literally nothing to do but sit in your tent for a month, and it's 125 degrees. The porta shitters are like 150 degrees. Like it's just hell.
Yeah.
So we finally get out of there.
And I want to pause you for 1 second on that.
Yeah.
So we're going to continue on the porta potties are hell. So just for the listeners, so you're there for like about a year, we'll just say just approximately roughly, right?
Yeah.
So because you were a reservist training once a month for a weekend and then a couple weeks out of the year and then whatever schools you're going to, how did that affect your job back home?
I think it's different for everybody. My employer was fantastic,
Okay.
and I have to give them a shout out. I work for a company called Fasten Master.
Fasten Master?
Yeah.
Okay.
Building materials manufacturer. So
Okay.
they sell building materials. They were phenomenal. They supported me 100%.
Awesome.
And yeah, I can't say enough good things about them. My job was waiting for me right when I got home. Never had any doubt. So yeah.
And you came back, slid right into the same job, and
Yep.
That's awesome.
Came back, they had my job waiting.
Because I know there's a law that they have to keep your job for you, but at the end of the day, that doesn't mean it's going to be a smooth comeback in. And
there's ways around that.
Yeah,
sure.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's good. You had a company that supports veterans, or for that point, supporting active duty military.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
So yeah, we had our quarantine in Kuwait for a month, and then unfortunately had another quarantine in New Mexico for a couple weeks where we literally felt like prisoners out in the desert. But then got to
and that's because when you got back to the U.S., they're like, hold on here a little longer.
Yeah, anytime you change countries, you have to quarantine.
Yeah.
So it's pretty brutal, but got through it. Got to go home and start living my life again. But stayed in touch with Abdul and Mohammad throughout the whole time.
Email?
WhatsApp.
WhatsApp.
So we exchanged WhatsApp numbers.
Yeah.
And so we would text all the way up to the evacuation and just stayed in contact. So it was, I guess transitioning into the evacuation a little bit. August of 21, Abdul and Mohammad had fled down to Kabul from Mazar Sharif because the Taliban had, started taking all the cities. They took Mazar Sharif. They took all the perimeter cities until Kabul was kind of the last holdout.
And what were they doing when they were taking over the cities?
What were the Taliban doing?
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, they got through, they were pretty unimpeded. I mean, they took over the cities without a lot of
resistance.
shots fired. Yeah.
Without resistance.
Yeah. Because once we left, it was just so obvious to everybody what was going to happen. Right. And it wasn't necessarily the Afghan National Army's fault because they laid down their arms because they didn't have any leadership. It's like once we left, it was very obvious what was going to happen. Their president fled the country.
Yeah, the captain of the team left.
I mean, when your president leaves the country, are you still going to fight? I mean, it's like at that point it becomes, I'm going to protect my family by whatever means necessary, and you can't blame them for that.
Yeah.
So the Taliban swept across the country very rapidly, and I think it was a big intelligence failure more than anything. A lot, I don't know, CIA, a lot of experts were saying the ANA was going to hold out for a year. Some were saying they were going to hold out indefinitely. The Taliban took over the country in essentially 5 days.
Yeah.
So it was just absolutely absurd. And so yeah, Abdul and Mohammad had fled down to Kabul. That was the last safe place to be. And then I get a call from Abdul. He FaceTimed me, and I remember I'm sitting in my kitchen.
That's right, because you can FaceTime.
Yeah. So he or WhatsApp FaceTime,
or
whatever
that's what I mean.
it was.
Yeah, I was saying FaceTime, but yeah.
Yep. So I'm sitting in my kitchen at my house, sitting around my kitchen island with my mother, and Abdul FaceTimes me, and he's holding his little daughter. And, you know, this is as the Taliban is right at the footsteps of Kabul. And my mom is just to my right, and I can just see her start crying because it's very clear what's about to happen to not only Abdul, but his entire family, and especially this little girl who at this point is like 1 or 2.
Right.
And her future, she doesn't know it, but her future is just being ripped away from her.
Oh, 100%.
Immediately. You know, she's never going to have a job. She's never going to go to school. She's never going to be able to leave the house without her face being covered or be able to leave the house without a male escort. Her life is over as of that point, and she's 1 or 2. And so we hang up, and yeah, my mom's just a mess. And I remember just saying to her, like, I don't know, like, if there's anything I can do. I don't think there's any way that I can help them. So fast forward, I talked to Abdul again, and he had researched the SIV program, Special Immigrant Visa.
So what's the acronym?
SIV, Special Immigrant Visa, which is a visa that we promise our allies, where if you work for us for, I want to say it's 2 years, there's a specific time frame that we're going to promise you safety if anything happens, and we're going to bring you to America.
And is it? But here's the thing: is this an empty promise?
It proved to be an empty promise.
Right.
I don't know if it was intended to be an empty promise. I don't think so.
I'll slide this down if you want to top yourself up.
Yeah, thank you. So he had been doing some research on the SIV program, and that was the first time I had ever heard of the SIV program. And I will say, as an American English speaker, going through the documents that were required for an Afghan to fill out for an SIV it was insane. I mean, it was difficult for me to wrap my head around these documents. So you're fluent in this language. I'm fairly fluent in English.
Fairly fluent in English. I'll have you put that bottle over there, though.
Okay.
Yeah, you're
as fluent as someone in the military can be at English. So for an Afghan who, you know, some of them don't speak any English, most of them definitely can't read and write English. It was nearly impossible. So, you know, they were set up for failure immediately.
Right.
But I start going through the documents to see what we need. The first thing that we need is a recommendation letter, an HR support letter from his direct supervisor, an American. So I'm like, all right, do you remember who your direct supervisor was? Because it wasn't us. And he gives me a first name, or I think he remembered the last name too. And so I go to my LT from deployment, and he's able to go through the database and look up who this guy was. So I sent him an email explaining who I am, explaining that Abdul and Mohammad are both looking for this HR support letter so they can get out because they're highly at risk because the Taliban is literally, you know, slitting throats of anybody that works for the Americans, obviously.
And raping the children and killing the women and dragging them in the streets. Yeah, really good. I'm just good, solid dudes.
Yeah, I'll fast forward a little bit. The shit that's going on right now today.
Yeah, we can fast forward and we can go back.
Yeah, we will. I mean, there's reports of the Taliban are coming in. They're raping people's wives and children and then slitting their throats right in front of you and then killing you. I mean, it's wild what's going on today, and nobody's talking about it. The government's not doing shit about it. The government just seems to want to sweep everything Afghanistan related under the rug and forget about it.
Right.
Anyway,
it's a fucking disaster right now.
It is an absolute disaster right now. We can get into, you know, post-withdrawal Afghanistan a little later. I'll tell you a little bit more about what's going on. But anyway, so I email this dude and I don't get a response. And like, you know, time is ticking. Like there's actually a deadline at this point. So the very next day,
there's a deadline for the forms to be filled out, or a deadline to get them out of there.
No, just for like U.S. withdrawal. So I think,
Right.
it was the end of the month at that point. I think it was the 31st was the deadline before U.S. troops were out of there. And like, that was it, so that was your deadline to get anybody you wanted to get out.
Because wasn't just 1 year anniversary?
It was 2 year.
2 year anniversary.
August 31st, 2021 was the original deadline.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we left a little bit before that actually, but so, I emailed this guy for a second time and finally I get a response and, it was pathetic. And I talk about this in the book, but I changed his name, because I didn't want to call him out.
You want to call him out here?
You know what? I actually don't remember his real name now. I did at one
fuck him.
point, but fuck him. Yeah.
Yeah. His name is Fuck him.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mom.
So he responds and he says, I can't write a recommendation letter. My worry is about my security clearance and my job. So he essentially said, I'm more worried about my career than I am about a human life of someone that worked shoulder to shoulder with U.S. troops for however many years.
For however
many years.
Yeah.
Many years, way more than what the minimum requirement was. And it was just so gutless, like throughout the whole digital Dunkirk experience of all these people stepping up to make up for our.
And you used his name in the book, or you said you didn't?
I changed his name in the book.
I hope that this guy buys the book, reads it, and realizes
he'll know. I mean,
it's him, and he's a fuck up.
If he reads it, he'll know it's him for sure. But like I said, as we went through the whole digital Dunkirk experience of all these like civilians and veterans stepping up to make up for the lack of government effort, you saw people, putting their ranks on the line to do the right thing.
Right.
There's a ton of examples of people knowing what the moral thing was to do, and they did it. And this guy, just crumbled. So I kind of thought we were dead in the water at that point.
Because he's kind of your only.
Yeah, I mean, that was step one.
Yeah.
Of what
step
we
one,
needed.
you're getting shut down right away.
Yeah, step one of like 20 steps.
Yeah.
So I didn't tell Abdul right away. He followed up with me later that night. He's like, hey, did you hear from what's his name? And I said, no, I haven't heard yet. Like, I'm going to keep trying. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, I got to figure out another way. So luckily.
And this guy, by the way, was in the Army, right? The guy that shut you down, or was
he was
just a government worker?
Yeah, I think I think he was in the Army.
Okay.
He wasn't in my chain of command at all.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, he was in the Army. So luckily, like 2 days later, we actually get a HR support letter from a different supervisor that Abdul and Mohammad had previously. His name was Brian Wilhelm, and awesome dude.
See how we give his name out?
Absolutely. So yeah, thank you, Brian, if you're listening. You know, literally saved these guys' life.
That's awesome.
Without that, we wouldn't have got past step one.
Yeah, step one.
So we get past step one, and my next.
But is there super excitement from Abdul at this point that that he's got this letter?
Yeah,
Does he understand the process? It's going to be a minute.
I don't know that he fully understood it,
right?
But he knew, because here's the thing: in Afghanistan, there's rules, but it's more like guidelines. It's more like a gray area, and there's always a way past it, right? Where when you're talking about immigration of the United States, it's very black and white, right? Like I still get daily today, 2 years later, I get messages on Instagram and everywhere on social medias of Afghans trying to get out because my information actually got leaked during the evacuation as someone that could help. Another story maybe we'll get into in a minute.
Yeah.
So my next step is to go to my local state senator, Debbie Stabenow, and just try to like figure out how we can expedite these visas. Her team was amazing. I have nothing but great things to say about them. They were, called me back right away. They wanted to help as best they could, but their guidance, and I'm guessing their guidance came from the State Department, was have them, we have their documents, we have everything submitted, and this is, after I completed all the rest of the steps. And they're like, have them shelter at home until we call them. Now, having served in the military and working for the government, I knew that this is not going to happen by, next week or in 2 weeks, whenever the deadline was at this point. And, we had given up Bagram airfield at this point for some crazy fucking reason. I think that, any private or private first class that's ever been to Afghanistan probably knew that Bagram was our best held position and probably our biggest strategic base in the country. So to give that up before we got everyone out that we wanted to get out doesn't make any sense. And I don't think that they've given an answer yet as to why we really gave it up. So we had to do the evacuation through the H-Kaya airport, Hamid Karzai International Airport, which is like the public airport with almost zero security.
Very smart.
Yeah. And I had been to that airport before. So I remembered like doing the mental math on my own, where I knew that, Bagram had multiple runways that we could use. H-Kaya had one runway. So I start thinking about the numbers of people that are going to be trying to get out versus this one runway versus the amount of days we had left. And like the math wasn't adding up, right?
Right.
I mean, 1 + 1 was not equaling 2. And I'm like, okay, well, having them shelter at home is not the solution. We need to just get them to the airport immediately and just figure it out, right? Like we don't have time to just sit around and wait for the United States government to call me to say, hey, it's okay for them to go to the airport now.
Right.
I talked to Abdul and Mohammad and we come up with a plan because they're only
And I'm guessing, is Abdul and Mohammad, do they live near each other?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, they were hiding, they lived up in Mazar Sharif. They had fled down to Kabul at this point,
Okay.
Where they had some family. So I don't know exactly what the living situation was, but I think they were living together. That hiding together at that point is probably the better term. So yeah, we decided it was time to make a run for the airport.
And I don't know if I asked you this. Did they have a wife?
Mm-hmm.
And one kid, 2 kids?
No, so they both have wives, and there is at this point 5 children between them, all under 8 years old, anywhere from like 8 months.
So they're hiding, and they're
old.
hiding with their family.
Yeah.
Okay. Just painting the picture here.
Yeah, I mean, adding young children in this situation was devastating.
Yeah, not easy.
Man, there's some horrendous shit that happened at the airport with little kids now that we're talking about it. I mean, I interviewed a bunch of Marines for my book, and the shit they saw is something that nobody should see.
Like people throwing babies over fences and shit.
Yeah.
Getting stuck.
People were, I mean, it's hard for Americans, I think, to wrap their head around the desperation of the Afghans that wanted to get out of the country. But when you think about the Taliban coming in and submitting Sharia law and just, it's devastation. Like these people would rather choose death than to live under the Taliban.
Right.
So there was, like you said, there was mothers that were throwing newborn babies over 12-foot T-walls that had concertina wire on the top. And the mothers that weren't strong enough to throw a baby over a 12-foot wall, their babies were getting stuck in the C-wire and they were bleeding out, and there's no way for anybody to get to them.
No.
And the Marines that I interviewed were talking about, seeing babies in Abbey Gate just getting stomped. There was some pretty shitty men there that were using babies as rugs, using little children as rugs, so they would place them over the C-wire so that they could try to get over the C-wire without getting cut. I mean, just the most horrendous shit. And when you talk about desperation, I mean, I'm sure a lot of your listeners have seen the videos where Afghans were holding on to C-17s.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to, holding on to the wheel wells. Like, can you imagine holding on to an airplane? Like, that's how desperate you are to get the fuck out of this situation. I think that holding on to the wheels of a C-17 is a better option than staying here.
It's fucking nuts.
It's nuts.
And you're going to die either way. You're just
you're
picking how
going
you're
to
going to die.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to die holding on to an airplane. Like, it's not like these are dumb people. They knew, but that was a better option than living under the Taliban.
Yeah. Or dying from the Taliban.
So yeah, we decided to make our first attempt at the airport, and so Abdul and Mohammad and their families make their way over. They leave their families a little bit back because they know it's going to be a disaster right up to the gate. So they kind of go and do their first scouting mission, and so I lead them to Abbey Gate, and Abbey Gate was a sewage canal. So it was just a small canal with concrete on both sides, and it probably had knee-deep water, shit water that they had to wade through. And so their first 12 hours at the
And when you just for the record, it's not shitty water, it's shit water.
It's actually shit water.
Yeah, feces.
Sewage.
Yeah,
feces.
sewage. Yeah.
They're standing
Just want to
in
paint the
feces.
picture for the listeners. Yeah. It's just
And-
not shitty water. It's shit water.
And it is as packed as you can imagine. For any of your listeners, I would challenge you to just Google Abbey Gate, and you can see how many people were standing in this small space trying to get out. So, yeah, first attempt, they get to Abbey Gate, but it's just such a shit show, and we don't have a good plan to get them out. We don't actually have their visas yet, obviously.
And you say this is you guys trying to get them, you're getting...
This is,
Abdul.
At this point, it's just me talking to Abdul and Mohammad.
Okay.
Because on deployment, I was, the closest friends with them, so they were really relying on me to help them. So, they get up pretty close to the gate, like where they can yell at Americans, but, it's just such a shit show there. Everyone is yelling. Everyone has some waving documents or waving something that, it's just, we didn't have a chance in hell. So I remember that after about 12 hours of them being at the airport, being at Abbey Gate, Abdul texted me, and it said, "Brother, can I take a moment to go home and hug my family?" And every time I think about it, I get emotional. And I remember getting that text and being like, fuck, man. Like, he didn't say it, but I knew that he was super disappointed.
Because he doesn't think it's going to happen at this point.
Well, yeah, probably. But I think he's disappointed because he had been, 10 feet away from U.S. troops. And here I am, a non-commissioned officer in the U.S. military, and there's nothing that I can do. And I don't think that he fully understood,
right?
Why I couldn't do that. Because he's like, dude, like, why? I'm right here. Why can't you get me in? And I just felt so bad, and that I really
and helpless,
completely helpless. And that's honestly, that was the point where I promised myself, I'm like, there's nothing that's gonna stop me from getting these people out. Like, I don't give a shit what I have to do. If I have to fucking fly there myself, we're going to figure this out.
So you're kind of doing like Pineapple Express.
Sure. On a much smaller scale. Yeah. So,
right.
Scott Mann, Pineapple Express. I had the absolute pleasure of meeting Scott Mann, at an event in DC recently. Phenomenal guy. And they did great work and got a ton of people out of Afghanistan. Right.
So it's similar to that, but at a much smaller level.
Yeah, I mean,
the same concept, same concept.
Okay. I'm trying to get my friends out versus mass amounts of people, he was able to get out. But yeah, shout out to him, great dude. So they go home, and I realize that I need to step my game up and figure out some better resources. So
they leave the airport and go home.
They leave the airport, go back to their, the house that they were hiding
safe
in.
house, for lack of
whatever you want to call it, because they had been there for 12 hours, and they have. There's an 8-month-old baby there. So it's like they got to go back, feed the kids, whatever. So I take to the internet, not knowing anything about, what has been come to call Digital Dunkirk.
Digital Dunkirk.
Yeah, that was the name that had been given to it by somebody, some news organization or something, wrote an article about it. In reference, obviously, to the Dunkirk evacuation of France back in World War II, where British civilians went and saved the military.
And you can I think it's hashtag Digital Dunkirk, and pulls up a bunch of stuff.
Yep. Yeah. If you're on Instagram, hashtag Digital Dunkirk is a great one.
Yeah.
So, I start messaging everybody, and there's this news organization, Atlas News. I start talking to them. I hit up the people at.
You're making this like a full-time fucking job, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And again,
you're on a mission.
For sure. Shout out to my employer, my boss, Nikki. Covered me big time, and took my job over while I was trying to help Abdul and Mohammad. And she was like, go help them. I got you. So, thank you to her. So I take to the internet. I hit up, I think a big breakthrough for me was a couple things. One was I hit up the team at Zero Blog 30, a military podcast, Barstool's military podcast. And I knew that they were getting inundated with messages, but all three of them, Kate, Chaps, Cons, hit me back within an hour and with great advice. And Chaps actually introduced me to a guy named Chris Davis. He was like, hit up Chris Davis, who helped me greatly through the evacuation. And he actually ended up writing the foreword for my book.
Okay.
Amazing guy. And then Kate was the
one.
Which
pre-sale starts December 15th.
It does. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
I might say that a few more times.
Thank you.
It'll be on Amazon.
Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever you buy your books.
Wherever you buy your books. Did you do the audio?
I'm working. I'm trying to do an audio. Yeah, we don't have
Okay.
anything locked in, but hopefully by the time this podcast comes out, there will be an audio version as well. So we'll see. So Kate from Zero Blog 30 is really the one that introduced me to the Digital Dunkirk network, and so she gives me a contact to hit up, and I do, and after a whole bunch of vetting, I get added to this group chat on Signal, which is an app to talk privately.
Yeah.
And I'm just watching as this group thread,
A secure app,
technically,
as they call it. Yeah.
So this chat, which was called Neo Comms or something, non-combatant evacuation comms, started with about 50 people when I joined it, and ended at hundreds of people. But when I first joined it, I remember just kind of watching the chat just to see what I had entered, and I was amazed. I mean, just constantly, every second, just information being passed. I mean, we had really set up like a joint operations center on this thing where, maybe each person knew one person at the airport, but collectively, like, we knew fucking everybody.
Right.
And, like I said, the information being passed, what gates were open, what documents were being accepted at each gate, what unit was working the gate, who people knew in that unit. I mean, the information being passed was amazing, and I would never have been able to get these people out without being connected to this network. So, at this point, day 2, I'm like, okay, I know what units are working here. I have a couple phone numbers of people that are working at the gate, so I'm trying my best to hit people up. But again, these Marines at the gate are being inundated with not only what's in front of them and the bomb threats that are going on, but a million people probably texting them. And I guess to pause and talk about the bomb threats a little bit. I mean, we were getting notifications in our group chat. It'd be like break. Suicide vest headed to Abbey Gate in 3 hours or whatever. And I don't know where the information was coming from. I know that we had some CIA case officers in the group chat, and obviously that intel ended up being true, unfortunately. But one thing I talk about pretty deep in the book is the differences between what the troops on the ground were saying happened versus what the DOD report says happened.
Yeah, of course.
It is vastly different.
Yeah, or what the media said.
Yep. And there's one guy who a lot of people know now, Sergeant Tyler Vargas Andrews, who was a sniper that became a double amputee after the explosion. And the intel had been passed to his sniper team as to what this supposed bomber looked like. So they had intel from the CIA that a suicide vest bomber had left a mosque wearing a black dress, and he would be escorted by an older male. So Sergeant Vargas identified two men fitting this exact description. They were acting very erratic in their movements. And so he called the psychological operations team over. They concluded that they thought this was the bomber. He had another team come over. They concluded this was the bomber. He had his battalion commander come over, asked for permission to engage, and the battalion commander said, "I don't think I have that authority, and I don't know who does."
Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, this is exactly what happened. So
So just to recap, so three people, levels of command, or 3 individuals for confirmation, said, from our information, this looks like the bomber. This looks like the target.
Yep.
And then to engage, looking for the final authorization, the individual that he goes to says,
he says, "You do not have permission to engage." And then Sergeant Vargas asked him, he said,
"And who does?"
Yeah.
I don't know. That's some fucked up shit.
That's exactly
right
what
there.
happened. So Sergeant Vargas said, "Well, sir, who does know who has permission?" And he says, "I don't know." And then he left, and Sergeant Vargas never saw him again. So, and they had tracked these 2 guys for, I want to say, a few hours. I'd have to go back and listen to his testimony. I mean, this is all public record. Sergeant Vargas has come out and testified in front of Congress and everything. And actually, I had the pleasure of meeting him as well. another phenomenal dude. But I mean, imagine being the battalion commander of a Marine Corps infantry unit.
The answer is no.
Like, what do you think your job is?
Yeah.
You know, and look, if you're going to say, no, you don't have permission to engage, and here's the reason why, sure, understand. To be the fucking battalion commander of a Marine Corps infantry unit, and I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. An answer should never come out of that individual's mouth.
In this situation where I can see the fucking Taliban standing shoulder to shoulder with my guys, are you kidding? Like, it just, you know, I'm not even a Marine, and I wasn't even there, and it infuriates me.
Yeah.
And potentially because of that decision, we have, 13 American troops that are now dead.
Yeah.
A bunch of wounded, 200 Afghans that are dead. So it just goes back to, gutless decision making and people
lack thereof.
Yeah. People not willing to put their rank on the line to do the right thing. And I wasn't there. So, it's really hard to say what the right thing was to do, but there's failures all around.
Yeah. So you, at what point do you call, can we mention the military gentleman that his name starts with a Z?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I didn't know.
Sergeant Zinsky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cause he's still active duty, correct?
He is still active duty. Amazing guy. So yeah, I mean, that was probably like attempt 3 or 4 at that point. And, I guess without giving too much away, we'll just skip to that. So,
and we don't have to if you want to lead more into that.
No, it's a great time to go to him.
Yeah.
So Abdul and Mohammad make, multiple other trips, and we don't get in. Actually, at one point, they had gotten into the airport and then got kicked back out for not having the proper documentation.
And now who's kicking them out?
That point was the State Department.
Okay.
And if you ask anybody, any Marine that was on the ground, they fucking hate the State Department because, one, they never saw them, even though this was their operation. This was a State Department evacuation. This wasn't a DOD evacuation. Yeah. And these guys not only didn't come to the gates, but they only worked normal hours. So while Marines were standing guard,
12 and 12,
doing their best, if you ask Sergeant Zinsky, who I'll get to in a second, like, his biggest regret is not being able to help more Afghans. Like, all of them carry these huge emotional scars from not being able to save more people.
Yeah.
And they're out there, doing their jobs 24 hours a day. Yeah. And you have these State Department guys who are working, 8 to 4, 8 to 5, and then calling it a day in the middle of a fucking evacuation in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
This is the testimony I'm getting from the Marines. So again, I wasn't there.
Yeah. Your opinion.
And the requirements on documentation from the State Department was always changing. So one day something was good, the next day it wasn't, the next day it was good again. So these Marines were turning people away for something where 2 hours later that documentation was good again.
Right.
So another huge emotional scar that these guys carry. So anyway, they make their third or fourth attempt at the airport, and at this point, I had gotten some pretty good maps from a CIA officer that was in my group chat that would avoid Taliban checkpoints on the way to the airport.
So you've got yourself, your team, people in the chat group, former CIA guys or current CIA, Army guys, Marine guys, and people behind the scenes there trying to help.
Yeah, I have at this point, pretty far on, I have a very good network.
Yeah,
of what I think is a good network, where
that you basically created from
this digital Dunkirk network of people. Yeah. So I have all these sidebar conversations going on in addition to this one group text. So I have this map. I pass it to Abdul and Mohammad, and it essentially leads them to Abbey Gate on a good route to avoid Taliban checkpoints. And so they get there, they go through Abbey Gate, and again, it's just an absolute shit show. And we were using jammers. The Marine Corps was using jammers just to avoid IEDs, obviously, any signal IEDs that might come through. So they were jamming any telephone network signals, which made it tough to communicate. So like anytime I wanted to talk to Abdul, like he would have to, rebound back to the back so he could call me. But we were getting some calls through. So every call was super valuable, right? And I remember at this point getting a call from him, and This one was a little different because, you know, I said hello and I was like, hey, what's going on? But he wasn't there. And I could hear him yelling, but it was like, it sounded like it was at a distance. So I knew he was like holding his phone out here and yelling at somebody.
Right.
And he was yelling at this guy. He was like, talk to the sergeant, like talking about me on the phone. And he's speaking English saying, talk to the sergeant. So Sergeant Zinsky, 2-1 Marine Corps, was standing at Abbey Gate.
Takes the phone.
What's
the chances of that?
Dude, so crazy. I mean,
it's like slim to none.
He answers the phone and he says, Sergeant Zinsky, United States Marine Corps. And I like froze for a second, just trying to, because at this point I had been up for, 4 or 5 days without sleeping at all.
Right.
So I was a little bit out of it, but I was like, oh shit. Okay. Quickly regrouped and identified myself. I was like, Sergeant Cook, United States Army. These guys are SIV applicants. I have all their paperwork. I've worked with them. I can personally vouch for them. I have them manifested on flight, Cam Air, and so at this point, because the guys that Save Our Allies had helped me get them manifested. So shout out to Nick Pomashano, Tim Kennedy, Chad Robichaud. Those guys helped me get them manifested on a flight.
And those are the Pineapple Express guys.
Those are the Save Our Allies guys.
Oh, Save Our Allies, correct.
Another very similar to the Pineapple Express, Scott Mann. So Sergeant Zelensky's like, hey, like, I don't see their paperwork here. I'm like, dude, they don't have it,
Yeah.
And
do me a solid. They don't have it.
Yeah. And like, I know these dudes. And he's like, okay, well, just come down here and I'll grab them, but you got to come escort them yourself. He thinks because there was Army there. So
he thinks you're still there.
Like I'm boots on the ground there.
Yeah. You're like, I'm in fucking
Michigan.
Michigan.
Like, dude, I'm sitting in my kitchen in Michigan. And it was like so chaotic. And I'm like, brother, like,
it's wild, right?
I need you to do this. And, I know he didn't hesitate. He was like, okay, bro, I got you. Like, I'm going to pull one of my guys and I'm going to get these guys down to State Department. And I just lost it. And it was so chaotic that I immediately wrote down his name because I knew it was going to come in handy at some point and I would probably need it. But in the chaos, I thought he said Valensky with a V. So I wrote down Valensky.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And his name was Zelensky with a Z. So, they get into the airport and they go dark for like 2 or 3 hours. And I don't actually know that they're in. I just know that this Marine was like, hey, I got you.
Yeah. And so now there's no more phone communication.
Yeah. So they go dark for 2 or 3 hours, not responding to anything.
And you can't reach out to him because you don't have his number. This Zelensky.
Yeah. No. I don't.
And actually you have his name wrong too.
Yeah. I don't know anything about him. I have a wrong name.
Yeah.
Which led to a wild goose chase for like 2 years, by the way, but I'll tell you about that in a second. So then probably 3 or 4 hours later, I get a text and it's just a picture. And it's from Abdul, and it's a picture of his wrist and his kid's wrist, and it has a State Department bracelet on it.
Oh, yeah, so they're in.
And they're in, and I know that they're safe at that point. And I can't even tell you the feeling. I mean, I'm getting emotional right now just thinking about it.
We've had tears in this room before, bro.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. And I remember,
I just watched this movie, The Covenant. That's just this fucking story. Have you seen this movie?
I've seen the fucking movie.
You don't like it?
It's
similar.
Look, it's similar. It was a good movie. I think.
You like Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yeah, no, it was a good movie. My only gripe with it is there was plenty of real stories to tell, and they chose to make one up instead. So that was a little bit frustrating. Good movie. People should see it. I'm sure there will be movies that come out about this. There's a ton of amazing books that have come out about this. So I'm sure one of them going to get made into a movie. I hope that more people write about this. I remember talking to one of my friends about writing this book, and he was like, well, are you worried about other people, writing books about this and kind of stealing your story? I'm like, dude, I hope every fucking Marine Corps member that was there writes about their story. Because the fact is, it seems, like I said before, it seems like the administration is trying to sweep this under the rug, and it's really not a Democrat and Republic thing. I think there's failures on both sides. So the news isn't reporting about this anymore. The government's not talking about it. So it's literally up to us. It's up to us as veterans to continue these stories. So yeah, I hope every veteran that was at Abbey Gate writes a book about this and gets their stories out there.
And don't wait for permission to get it released.
Yeah.
So it gets redacted.
Well, I don't know if I'll advise you on that,
No,
but Darin will.
I'll advise you on that. No, because seriously, and I don't want to stop the conversation right now because you're on a roll, but I do want to say, how long did it take you to get it approved? I mean, you were going to come on the show. Geez, I feel like
a
long time ago.
Yeah, I mean,
I was looking at emails that you sent me earlier.
Yeah,
and I was like, shit, this was a while ago. I feel like I've known you for a while because of our communication.
I know. Yeah, it probably took I don't remember exactly 7 to 9 months to get approved by the DoD.
Yeah.
So a little while. But yeah, so, I remember after getting that picture, I went up to my bedroom and I just started clapping and I throw my fists in the air and I'm just by myself. And
you probably punch the ceiling because you're a big guy.
Yeah, I almost punched my 20-foot ceiling. And, no, it was a fantastic feeling.
Yeah.
And then I guess I'll fast forward a little bit to talk more about Zelensky. But so I'm on like a 2-year hunt to find this guy, down the road after, so Abdul and Mohammad and their families make it here. They live like 30 minutes from me in Michigan right now.
Yeah, you're burying the lead, man. That's the best part.
Yeah, I know. I got more good parts coming, but they made it after a long journey. So they had to go to...
So where do they go first? They go to New York, Washington?
They went to Qatar. Then Germany, and then D.C., and then, you know what? They came to Indiana for a while, Camp Atterbury, I think.
Oh, yeah, Camp Atterbury.
So they were there at... they were there for months, just kind of waiting to get released.
Like processing center.
Yeah, so once they got here, they had to get sponsored by a refugee organization. So I connected with Ann Arbor Jewish Family Services, actually, who's a refugee organization that was just amazing to work with. So they sponsored them, got them out of the camp, put them up in a hotel, got them phones, brought them food every week, got them computers, paid all their bills, paid for their like attorney fees, helped them with all their immigration documents, like a ton of stuff.
Yeah, because once they get here, it's not like you're just here and you're like, oh, welcome.
There's a ton of stuff to do, and I would never have known where to start. So amazing organization.
And what's the name of the organization again?
Ann Arbor Jewish Family Services.
Ann Arbor Jewish Family Services. Okay.
Amazing group. And especially, you think about a Jewish organization helping Muslims. It's like you just good people that want to help humanity, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, they get them here. So then I start this long goose chase of trying to find Zelensky.
Yeah, with not with a Z, which because you don't know.
So I have a bunch of Marine contacts going through like the email database, and I remember getting a text from a buddy, and it's like, well, it turns out there hasn't been a Sergeant Zelensky in the United States Marine Corps since the 60s. So, so we know we're hit a dry hole. So then I'm like, you know what? Like, let's go back to where this whole thing started. I'm going back to Instagram, and I'm going to find this guy. So I post on, there's this Instagram page, Northern Provisions. And I post on there. I'm like, hey, does anybody know Sergeant Zelensky? He was a Marine at Abbey Gate on this date, and he saved my guys, and I just want to say thank you. And probably 20 minutes later, somebody responds to the comment, and they're like, do you mean Sergeant Zelensky?
I sure do.
And I was like, fuck yeah, that's my dude. I know it. Like, that's obviously my guy.
Yeah.
Like, so within the hour of me posting that, I'm on a phone call with Sergeant Zelensky down at Camp Pendleton, California.
Fucking technology.
And
because now he's he's back in the U.S.
Yeah, he's back.
Yeah, of course.
And he's got a brand new kid. And actually, you want to hear something crazy about him? We were talking about dead kids. I know that's not a light topic, but an Afghan mother handed him a dead baby, and just walked back out in the crowd. Didn't say anything. Just handed over her dead baby. He was holding this dead baby because his baby was born while he was on this deployment. So he was holding this dead baby before he even held his own baby. And just like, think about what that does to you. It's just, I mean, there's a million stories like that, or just the horrendous shit that these guys had to go through just because of our complete lack of government planning from top down.
Literally.
Anyway, back to a better topic, I guess. So I get on the phone with this guy and we talk for probably.
So so how do you get his number?
Through Insta. So his buddy saw that I had posted that on Order Provisions. He's like, "Do you mean Sergeant Zelensky?" I'm like, "Yes."
Yep. Yeah. So
we get into a side chat and I give him my number.
Yeah.
I'm like, have this dude call me. And yeah, within an hour of me posting this, he calls me.
You done making noise over there, Captain? Okay. This fucking guy. He's like, I'll just cut it out.
So he calls me and we talk for an hour or two. And he knew who I was instantly. And
well, yeah, because and the interesting thing is you know each other's voices.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right?
I remembered him specifically.
Fuck yeah, you're not going to forget that voice.
And man, we talked forever, and like we were both just like sobbing, crying, and it was so important for him because he had just been through this horrible scenario, him and all his boys, and they were fucked up about it.
Yeah,
and they still are. And I hate to say that about him. Amazing guy. I know he's doing great things, but it couldn't not affect you. It would affect anybody.
100%.
And
he's still active duty, right?
Still active duty, yeah. But for him to see something good came out of it meant the world to him. I mean, he's thanked me multiple times, and obviously I thank him a ton.
Yeah.
But he's like, dude, thank you. He was like, you don't even realize how much this means to me. And we just like sobbed on the phone together, you know? And, yeah, so for him to see something good came out of it is amazing. And, so him and his dad actually flew up and, came to Michigan.
Yeah, because we were at one point trying to get you guys down.
Yeah, we were both going to try to come on.
But then we were kind of concerned because he's still in.
He's still active duty, so it's
there's a lot of rules.
It's hard to ask him to.
Well, and plus there's things that you can say and I can say that
Right.
if he's here, he's like,
sure.
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, he came to Michigan, and I gave him a big hug as soon as I saw him, and then watching him.
Do you have a picture of him?
I do. Yeah.
When you were up, when he was in Michigan,
I have a picture with him and Abdul and Mohammed's family.
Make sure
we
should
make
sure you send me that
there.
So that gets some up there.
But to see him go over and give a hug to Abdul and Mohammad, and to see the kids remembered him. Which was really cool.
It's amazing.
So he came up with his dad, and his dad was just crying. And, I've never seen a more proud dad in my life. This guy saved 9 people who would almost probably certainly be dead right now.
Right.
So amazing moment. He came over, and Abdul and Mohammad made us a great Afghan dinner, which is, if you haven't had Afghan dinner before, you better go find an Afghan restaurant as soon as possible, because it's amazing.
Yeah.
So just
it's a good one
wonderful
downtown,
time.
actually.
Yeah, downtown Indy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if you had more time, we'd go.
That'd be fun. Yeah.
You'll come back.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll have you back.
But amazing moment, and just like, brought some closure, I think, to all of us on those events. But yeah, it was wild.
And so the book, Life and Death of Abby Gate, you wrote this with Robert Conlon.
Yep.
Who, by the way, is a veteran, Navy veteran, and actually played hockey.
He did, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he's a great dude. I've got nothing but great things to say about my experience working with him when I worked with him.
Yep.
And I'm sure you do too. So if anyone is looking for someone to help share their story, tell their story, form their story, or if you need him to do 99.99% of the work, he can do that too, because he's fucking legit. He's good.
Yeah. He is.
He was never late for a meeting. He was on time every time we scheduled something. And he was prepared. There was no bullshit. And it was a great experience. So big shout out to Robert Conlon, 100%. Kudos to him. But for you to write the book, what was your goal? You want to share the clusterfuck that happened and how you were able to, with some teamwork and some good humans out there, do some good?
Yeah, I mean, mine wasn't so much political focused. I mean, I think I said a little earlier, like, it was a complete failure from top to bottom. And obviously there's a Democrat in the White House right now, but I think it was a complete failure on probably both the past presidents. So both sides of the aisle, I think, are to blame. So it really wasn't political for me. It was, there's some, a lot of names have been named about heroes at Abbey Gate, and extremely deserved to those guys. There's also a lot of guys that haven't been named.
Right.
And I was lucky enough to be able to name some of them. Some of the names didn't come up tonight. That's okay. They're in the book. But
yeah, if you want to give a couple shout outs to some names right now, you're more than welcome, or they can just wait and read the book.
Yeah, I'll make people wait and read the book.
Yeah.
But there's just incredible acts of bravery all around. And a lot of these names haven't come out. So just feel very lucky and honored that these Marines and soldiers were willing to, put their story in my book and tell their story from their point of view. Because that's, you can never forget what happened on the ground. The guys on the ground know the truth. It doesn't fucking matter what the DOD report says. It matters what that Lance Corporal that was standing on the Jersey barrier at Abbey Gate has to say.
Right.
And those are the stories that we tell in the book. I think one big one that's going around right now is the DOD report says that it was not a complex attack and there was no small arms fire after the explosion. And it was a single bomber.
That's not true.
That was not true. Again, not being there. Every single Marine that I've talked to that was there says there was an explosion and then there was a ton of small arms fire.
Yeah.
And people got shot. And, for them to, and what's weird is initially when the report came out, it said it was a complex attack, but then they retracted it for some reason. And they said that these Marines that were reporting small arms fire were just under stress and not remembering correctly. But for all of them,
those fools,
all of them,
all bad memories,
to say that they were receiving small arms fire after the explosion, it's like, it seems fairly obvious to me that there was a little more than what the DOD report is saying.
Yeah, 100%. I don't not believe that at all.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's a proper English sentence, but
yeah. So yeah, again,
Justin goes, it's not. He corrects my grammar all the time. This fuck.
But yeah, to get back to your question, the motivation for me was to tell Abdul and Mohammed's story because it's important. And it's important because when you're the United States of America and you make a fucking promise to your allies, you better fucking keep it.
Yeah.
And we made a lot of empty promises to our Afghan allies that stood shoulder to shoulder with us against the Taliban for 20 years. And a lot of them are dead now because of us. And
yeah,
a lot of them are still there. I have a buddy who I'm currently trying to help.
I was going to say, are you still trying to help people, or do you not want to talk about that?
I am in some capacity.
Right.
I'll tell you about this guy. So I have a friend whose name is Staff Sergeant Kurbanali. He is...
Say that last name again.
Kurbanali.
Okay.
He's an Afghan. He's an Afghan. He's also a United States citizen. He's also currently serving in the United States Air Force. And his mother, his sister, his grandmother got left in Afghanistan, and the government didn't do shit to help them get out. And they're still
I feel
stuck.
like that's such a huge risk for them, because if they find out their kid is in the U.S. military, God, that's got to be enough risk just to get them out.
Well,
I mean,
their house are so yeah. Let me tell you this: they the Taliban came to their town in Ghazni, Afghanistan, and quickly. I mean, it's not hard for them to figure out who has U.S. connections, right? They go and grab somebody, they put a fucking gun to their head, and they say, tell us everything you know. Who worked with the Americans here? And people spill their guts.
yeah.
So the Taliban quickly learned that Staff Sergeant Kurbanali was in the U.S. military, and his family was living right down the road. And they went there and they shot the shit out of it with AK-47s. I have a ton of pictures of bullet holes all over their house. Luckily, they weren't home. They came home and found their house shot up, took some pictures, and got out of there.
And you have those pictures?
Yep.
All right.
We put them up in a safe house. We moved them up to northern Afghanistan, about 7 hours away, put them in a safe house through a couple great organizations, and had them up there for months. And honestly, in my head, I'm like, all right, well, they're safe now. We have them in a safe house. Like, the government is going to help us get these people out. This is a U.S. Air Force member's family.
Yeah, come on.
This is easy.
This is easy.
They never did shit, and still honestly haven't done shit. So right now they're
so you're working with your people.
Well, yeah, we're trying to. So Staff Sergeant Mikael went over there like ready to go back into Afghanistan and put his life on the risk to get his family out. But luckily was able to get somebody to sneak them across the border into Pakistan, which is a whole nother shit show right now. There's a ton of refugees hiding in Pakistan. A bunch of people that have applied for a program called humanitarian parole, which is another visa to get out.
Yeah.
And the only way to get out on humanitarian parole is through Islamabad, I believe, which is in Pakistan. So all these people prior to getting accepted for the program are over there. There's like over 1 million refugees hiding in Pakistan right now. The Pakistani government just put out that at the end of this month, they're all getting deported back into the hands of the Taliban.
Which is a death trap.
Afghanistan. It's a death trap. So Staff Sergeant Mikael's family, who he paid someone to sneak them into Pakistan, is hiding in Pakistan. And if they don't get out by the end of October, when we're obviously recording this, they will be deported back into the hands of the Taliban. So that's, that's what's happening right now to the immediate family of a United States Air Force member.
Wow, that's crazy. I mean, that if you really think about that's, yeah, I mean, he's a U.S. citizen, a U.S. soldier or airman, whatever, tomato, and he's got family that he can't even help.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we do have a congressman that's trying to help us. I don't know how successful or how much energy is going into that from their end, but time will tell.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Afghanistan right now is just an absolute disaster. Women can't go to school. They can't own businesses. They can't really have jobs at all. They can't leave the house without a male escort. They can't leave the house without their entire bodies, including their faces, covered. People are still being hunted that worked with the U.S.
And the Taliban's a bunch of goat fuckers.
Yeah. It's just a disaster.
I just wanted to throw that in there.
And, there's a ton of opinions on what the best path forward is for Afghanistan among Americans, even among Afghans. I mean, one thing about Afghanistan is you're never going to get everyone to agree on anything.
Right.
It's just how it is. It's how it's always been. Because it's always been just a bunch of factions of essentially warlords that have ruled different regions. I will say there's only one group right now who is fighting the Taliban that I'm aware of, and that's the NRF, the National Resistance Front, which is being led by a man named Commander Massoud, who is the son of the original Commander Massoud, the Lion of Panjshir, who was the leader of the Northern Alliance, who fought off Russia. There's that movie, what is it? 12 Strong? About
12 Strong.
About the horse soldiers.
Yeah. I got a bottle of their booze upstairs.
Do you? Nice. So
on the second floor.
They were the ones that those horse soldiers worked with the Northern Alliance to fight the Taliban. So the original Commander Massoud was the leader of the Northern Alliance.
Yeah.
He was killed by Al-Qaeda on September 10th, 2001. So right before September 11th, because they knew that he was going to be, the puppet of the United States in Afghanistan. So they killed him. Now his son has stepped up, now that the Taliban's back in power, to try to fight off the Taliban. And he's got a big army up in the Panjshir Valley. And as far as I know, he's the only one who's actually fighting the Taliban currently. And again, there's a ton of opinions on whether they're the right organization or not. But without being a complete expert in Afghanistan, I would say, the enemy of our enemy is probably our friend right now. So, yeah, it's wild. Actually, I got a really great opportunity to meet him, Commander Massoud, in Vienna this year, earlier this summer, and got to spend about 3 days with him. And seems like a really intelligent and honest dude, and I really think that he wants what's best for Afghanistan. And yeah, he wants to give the power back to the people. So I hope he's successful.
So what's next for you?
Yeah. So, pre-sale December 15th, book comes out February 15th. And I'm still continuing my, advocacy work for, Afghans who are still stuck there, as well as, troops that U.S. troops that worked at HKIA during the evacuation. So I actually have my own podcast with a good friend named Beth Bailey.
And what's the name of the podcast?
It's called the Afghanistan Project Podcast.
Afghanistan Project Podcast.
And it started out as...
on all the platforms?
Yeah, anywhere you find your podcast. So it really started out as a resource for Afghans that were stuck to figure out what types of visas they might qualify for. And it's still kind of that. But it has kind of morphed into like a place where we have a bunch of HKIA vets come on and talk about their experience and just get to share their story.
Nice.
So it's been a good good project for both me and Beth, who I do it with, and we hope to keep it going.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, so Life and Death of Abbey Gate.
Yep.
Pre-sale December 15th, and then regular sale February 15th.
Yep.
Wherever you buy your books.
That's right.
It'll be on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all of those good places. How do people reach you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. Is probably the best spot. Mikael Cook 89. That's Mikael Cook 89. And yeah, that's probably the best place to find me.
Awesome, man. Well, listen, I want to thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for driving down here. It's been a long time coming. Like I said, we've been going back and forth for about a year. And again, shout out to Robert Conlon, who kind of connected us together, for lack of a better word. But I appreciate you. You're a true hero. You're an everyday GSD guy for sure. I got a little gift for you. Of course, you're gonna leave with some Good Dudes coffee, but
nice.
I've got an everyday GSD shirt for you, and hopefully you wear it and you show everyone that you get shit done on the daily. And I don't have them right here at the studio, but when I bring you out, we'll grab a couple more for your Afghan buddies.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, they'd appreciate it. Yeah, thanks so much, man. You got to sign my Back to Bulletproof copy of your book here before I go, too.
I'll do that for you. Thanks for coming, brother. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching the Everyday GSD podcast. Episodes come out on the 1st and 15th of the month. If you want to watch people or listen to people that Everyday GSD, please download and subscribe wherever you listen or watch the Everyday GSD podcast. Everyday GSD.